たいた。またんだ。
遅くにいらしても温かいコーヒーを。またどうぞ。迷った時はコーヒーを飲みに来てください。
この気を逃さん。チリやったはっ
どけ。
時間の無駄です。やっチリこたびの私が勝つ。終わりだ。時間の無駄です。見切った。刀はもう鞘だ。
私を呼んだ。
何なりと
何かお困り。背中は任せ。
姉弟子参上です。今日の占いは義境を示すべし。
この気を逃さん。幸福を。やっ耐えてみて。
勝ったら
あなた様の
番号1を。私は
みんなの
護衛対象確認。スタンバイ。
今日の占いは二強を示すべし。新商品続々入荷。寄ってらっしゃい、見てらっしゃい。
Okay, to my dailies, I want to check in here real quick, because I'm accruing all these, like, points and stuff, but, like, this place hasn't had anything new in forever, so I have, like, 600 of these points. It also kind of sucks that they're giving me these, like, little figurines and stuff. They're giving me all these figurines, but I can only carry 10 things on my little shelf. So it's like, great, awesome, thank you for giving me all these things that I can't use. Like, I can only use a small subset of them, because my shelf can only hold 10 things maximum, even though it can clearly hold more. Like, even though you can clearly, like you can fit, like, you're given like 6 shelves, or 6 or 8 shelves. I think it's 6 shelves, but you can clearly fit like 3, like jam-pack 3 things on one shelf, you know. So realistically, they should give you like 20 spaces, you know, so you could have 3 things on each shelf and then 2 extra, because, you know, some things might be smaller than others, so maybe you could fit another thing or 2. The fact that you have a limit of 10 is just so weird, because one, you know, like, if the idea is, of course, storage concerns, or it's like, oh, well, we have, like, we would have to store all that data somewhere, so obviously, you know, for 10 things on the shelf, every single person they would need to store the data of the locations of those 10 things for every single player of their game. Which, you know, takes up space, and so I can understand why they would want to limit that. But it's also like, it only appears in this zone, and this zone is incredibly minimal, right? This is a very, very small space. So the amount of actual shit you have to load in here is very small, because you don't have players. Like, you don't have players fucking around. So it's like crazy that you can only fit 10 things. Like, you can clearly see, yeah, 3 of those fit easily in a shelf. You can easily fit 3 things in every single shelf. So the fact that they limit you to 10 is just kind of shit. I assume they'll increase it at some point, but it is crazy that, like, you can, they keep selling you these, well, they sold you a bunch of these figures. Oh, they changed how this works. Oh, wow, look at all these little things. I didn't realize I was getting all these. So it's like, yeah, great, like, you can display every single one of your W engines, which is like, that's cool. And then that they give you, let's see, 6, so they give me 13 of these things. Like, basically, if I wanted to display all of these things that I bought, I couldn't. Like, that's what's so insane about that. Like, if I wanted to display all the things that they have available, and they haven't, like, changed it out in forever, I wouldn't be able to, which is, like, fucking insane. That they just don't give you enough space to do that. You know? Yeah, like, if I go into edit, I can only have 10 total things, 6, and only 6 W engines, too. I can only show 6 W engines total. It's incredibly limiting. I have no clue. Well, no, I mean, as I said, it's a space constraint. They just want to limit the amount of data they have to store. Because, like, the data for this place exists for everyone, right? They just need to store one set of data for this. Like, they only just have to store one layout. It's like, cool, here's the layout for this area. Every person uses that one layout. Therefore, you know, you don't need to change anything. Like, the amount of storage you actually use before that is very small because it's one copy of it. Whereas for the shelves, it's like now you have to store the location data of 10 objects, which honestly shouldn't be that much because realistically, all you need to really store is its location and the type, right? You need to store the exact location where it is on the shelf, right? So the exact XYZ coordinates, and then just a reference to the object. That's all you really need to store, which is not much. Like the reference, because you don't even need to store like the entirety of the object. No, because the objects themselves don't change. Like you have a collection folder of all the objects. That's the object list. All you need is this, hey, there is an object stored here, and when you're loading this, like when you're loading the shelf, load this reference, like the object referenced to this location, load this reference, like load the object data attached to this reference at this specific location. Super simple, like, because like the object data is going to be consistent for everyone. Everyone's object looks the same. So that is consistent. You're storing that in your servers anyway, or client side. So that data is already stored there. Anyway, the only thing that's unique to me as a player would be which objects are where. But I don't need a copy of that object stored for me. I just need a reference to the object. It's like, yes. And a reference is not much. Like you just need some sort of address to wherever you store the object. So it could be something super simple, right? You could just number them like 1 through whatever. Like if you have 100 things, you could just have an array of 1 to 100. So it's just like, hey, it's the object array. So if it was an object array, right, and hey, this one thing is that object. Oh wait, shit, it's Qingyi's one next. God damn it, I thought it was Bernice's. I got my title wrong then. I thought Bernice was the next one. Anyway. So basically, the way you store things, right? So like if they were storing their objects in an array, an object array, where it's like, oh cool, we have this array, index 1 corresponds to this object. If you open up the index array at this object, like if you open up this object array at index 1, it'll load all the appearance data, the 3D model, all that shit of the object. But you wouldn't need to store any of that for me as a player. You just need to store the index, right? So all you would need to be like, oh, okay, you loaded the object from that object index or that object array at index 1. You loaded the first object onto your shelf at XYZ position of 111. Great. All you would need to store is the location index, the location 111 coordinates, as well as just the index. You don't need to attach the object at all to the saved data. You just need the index of the object. Any way to reference it, because then basically all you gotta do is be like, oh, okay, it's index 1, cool. Well, when loading it, put that index into the object array to get the object data so that you can load it. Like, that would just be done on the fly. So it's not like it's actually would require extra storage, because you're only storing, XYZ coordinates of the object's location, and then just the index of the object itself, not the object in its entirety, just the index. This is the way you can reference and pull the object data. So it's like the size constraints would be ridiculously small, because you only allow 10 things. It's like, yeah, like that's so small. Like the amount of data storage necessary would be ridiculously tiny, and doubling that would still be a ridiculously tiny amount. Because like even if you store everything as integers, right? It's just like you would need just 4 integers for every four integers, 3 for the XYZ coordinate locations, and 1 for the reference of however you want to reference it, right? So it's just 4 integers. So you need 40 integers, but an integer is like 32 bytes, So 4 integers would still be like only 120, or it's 120 it'd be like 120 bytes, 128 bytes per object, right? So 128 bytes becomes 1,280 bytes for all 10 objects. But like, that's a kilobyte. You're saying the entirety of that shelf, all the unique data required to be stored for that shelf per player is like a kilobyte. A kilobyte. Like we do data in the terabytes, you know? Sure, obviously, it's going to add up because like any free player could have it. And also, even if you're not using the shelf, you're still storing data, right? You're still storing. You still have those array data, so they would just be stored as zeros. You might leave them as nulls and only instantiate them once someone puts even a single object there. But if they assume that you can zero them out, so they still require them to be zeros and stored, then they might still take up space. But even still, it's just like you're talking about a kilobyte per player. Like you just need it's the size of data is so small. You could conceivably store it on like a thumb drive, because flash drives are, USB stick drives are like still pretty big in size. You could easily store like maybe not millions of players worth, because it's like a million I think would be a terabyte. So it's like I guess I could see it adding up a little bit. It's like if you have a million players all storing a kilobyte worth of data, like 1,000, multiplying that 1 kilobyte times 1,000 is a megabyte times let's see, thousands a megabyte. 1,000 times 1,000 would be a million, right? So I guess a million would just be a gigabyte. So if you had a million players, if you're storing just the data for a million players at a kilobyte each, then yeah, it would be a gigabyte. And they have more than a million players, so it's like, sure. And what I was proposing is like, hey, at least give us double the number of storage locations. Would obviously double the size, so it goes from 1 gigabyte to 2 gigabytes. But like, still, a gigabyte is still ridiculously small. Like, you can get thumb drives for like 32 gigs easily for like $10 or less, right? So it's like, for a million players, even if you doubled it, it would still easily fit in that. And like, and let's say if it is a 32 gig thumb drive, right, and you bump it up to double the size at 2 gigs each, you could store 16 million players worth of data in that one thumb drive. So it's like, how can you, as a huge company that's making shitloads of money from all this, not be able to afford? So now I'm assuming they coded it properly, right? With just the coordinate data as well as a reference to the object. If they were storing a copy of every single object, then that gets bigger, right? If they're storing on that thing the entire appearance data, like all the 3D model data for every single object for each player, that would be incredibly stupid, because you don't need to do that. You would just need a reference to the objects. As all players would still be referencing that object. So each player doesn't need a copy of that 3D model as saved for that shelf. They just need to know where to load that 3D model based on what they've aligned. So if they did it the stupid way, and it's like, I really doubt they would do it that stupidly, because like, they've made lots of games, right? This is Endless Zone Zero. They've made 3 successful games before this one came out. Honkai Impact 3rd, which has been going on for over 10 years. Or not, maybe not 10 years. Close to that. It's getting close to that, I think. Genshin, which has been 5. And Honkai, which has been like 3. And then they produced this, which is getting a year old. So it's like, obviously they can't use the same team for everything. So maybe they did get a bunch of new programmers for this team, maybe. But you would think that with the collective knowledge, there's no way in hell they would do something as stupid as storing the 3D model of every single object for every single player. But, you know, hard to say.
かように夢中になって何アナイアレイター2は見たことある？未だ見てはおらぬヒューマノイド E800 が危険に満ちた週末の夜で少女を
Bernice's character quest were, yeah, I should have been, I mistitled this. Shui, I think I said Shui Yi. I think I've heard her pronounced Shui Yi, but like, I don't see how you can get Shui from what looks like King, but whatever. But yeah, so it's her character quest. I'm doing them in order. So I did Lycons and Arenas, and then I, for some reason, gapped on her. I moved immediately to, and thought Bernice was the next one, but no, it's Shui Yi first, then Bernice, then Lighter. Then I'm done, I think.
ちょうどご両人に業務上の頼み取り分け謎めいた力が災いをなすような
That's actually really interesting, now that I think about it. We haven't really heard much about we haven't heard much from Fairy. Like, I forgot how early game, like, she constantly pops up and says stuff. But, like, she barely... I don't think she popped up at all in the epilogue. Maybe she did pop up once or twice. And then I don't remember any instance where she popped up. Although, actually... yeah, just... I don't think she popped up at all in the other location, which... I mean, maybe that makes sense, because, like, she's mostly housed in the computer on their system. But they have, like... They've had instances where she does chime in through their phone, which, you know, would seemingly still make sense, even if they were in another location. And, like, she definitely chatted a lot more when you were going into the hollows and doing the television shit, because, like, she was the one explaining stuff. But yeah, like, basically, it seems like they phased her out a lot. But, like, she does have a huge subplot around her, because it's like, I think this AI was what was found in the box. This was found in the box, or in the safe that was in, like, the prologue. You know? So it's like, it's a little surprising. But, like, they kind of put her on the back burner. Although maybe that's it. Maybe they were just like, no, we need a Deus Ex Machina to allow them to do stuff. Because I guess otherwise, just as children, they would be kind of hard-pressed to be doing all the stuff they do. Like, proxies don't necessarily mean hacker. So having a good hacker could get them the information they need to continue the plot along. And maybe it's gotten to the point where we have enough friends that we don't really need Fairy anymore. Because, like, we have Lycon, who's connected to the mayor, who's able to get us information. Now we have Yishuan and her disciples that can present us information, so maybe we just don't need Fairy anymore. But it does beg the question of, like, well, who made her, and, you know, what's she there for, or is there going to be some sort of a subplot around her? And yeah, she's just been kind of, like, phased out slowly. She's been, like, speaking less and less, but then, like, doing these character quests, it kind of reminds me, oh yeah, Fairy exists. She, like, chimes up. Like, she chimed up during Rena's quest, and we had to, like, pretend we were using ventriloquism instead of, like, saying that it was Fairy from our phone to try to hide it. So... Actually, let me reread these things. I'm chatting too much. I'm not paying attention. That's actually really interesting. So this concept right here, it all being the biggest. No matter how many decrees they make, internet is still unstoppable, right? And guiding rather than blocking. Well, I mean, this game is made by a Chinese company, and the internet is essentially the web, right? The internet. It's a not too subtle metaphor of the internet. And so it's like, oh yeah, no, they make it's still unstoppable. So I think that kind of mirrors how China handles the internet indirectly. Like, so that the Chinese government is like big on censorship, right? They will heavily censor topics, and they have like direct control over the internet in China. So like they can ban all sorts of shit and whatever they want. They can be like, hey, you released this product. Well, this product is not good for the Chinese people, so we're going to stop it. You know, where you need approvals from the government or their agencies to be able to like produce any sort of entertainment and stuff like that. And that's like guiding rather than blocking. So obviously they're very, very censor heavy. So this could be this could be a metaphor for how the Chinese government is actually starting to treat the internet, where it's like, yeah, we can't censor as much on the internet, but simply because of how Chinese and Western cultures are intermingling. Like, Chinese culture is getting out. Like, obviously, Black Myth Wukong was a really good success. Now, people will see Black Myth Wukong, oh my god, Black Myth Wukong was a really good success. Yes, it is. But you also have to caveat that with a majority of its success was in China. You know? You can tell from the player data, the concurrent Steam users, that a majority of all Black Myth Wukong players was from China. Because normally a game that's popular globally will have peaks and troughs of their concurrent players. And usually the peak, or usually the low of a day, will be about like 50% of the peak. Because no matter if it's really popular globally, sure, there'll be times where a majority of the people will be awake. You know, like, I mean, you could argue it's, you know, either Western or Eastern or whatever, but basically the dips are like when a lot of people are asleep, like when a majority of when the Chinese people are asleep and Europeans, or the Chinese people and Americans, you know, that's when you'll see the dip, when only players from the time zones that are awake, plus like just people who live on different schedules, who are awake during midnight and stuff like that. But usually, if it's popular globally, you'll see something like that, where because it is globally popular, there will always be people in every time zone that are awake and playing it. But during the hours when the most populous countries are awake, and the highest gamer density per capita is awake, that's when you'll have the peak. Whereas Black Myth Wukong, the difference between the peak concurrent players and the lowest concurrent players was like a 90% drop. So if it peaks at 1 million, you know, for the day, the dip of that same day would be at like 100,000, which is still amazing. Like, and it peaked at like 2 million, right? So it's still really, really good, you know? But people like to use Black Myth Wukong as an example of like, my God, look how popular it was. Like, everyone loved it. It's like, well, no. Like, I mean, still, even a trough of 100,000 is still amazing, and that definitely means it was really popular globally. But if you look at it, that 90% peak was all happening within a certain time frame, and that peak was when Chinese players were awake. You know, so when Chinese players were awake, it increased its concurrent player base by 10 times when they're asleep, right? So clearly that indicates that it's far more popular in China. So to pretend that this is a global phenomena is like, because people are using like the 2 million, oh my God, 2 million peak. It's like, yes, 2 million peak, but when you have like 1.5 million of those during that peak was like Chinese players, it's like, I mean, still 500,000 non-Chinese players is still really good. Regardless, right? But I think people are trying to use the peak players to be like, oh yeah, yeah, it's super, super popular. I just wanted to caveat that because it's like there will be people who will do that, who will mistake how popular it was globally. I don't mistake how popular it was globally. I do admit it was still popular globally because, like, even if 90% of players who played it were Chinese, during its peak of 2 million, that would still mean 200,000 players who were non-Chinese. And that's only under the assumption that 90% of players were Chinese, which I don't think so. I think it'll probably be like 75% on the high end, and maybe a little lower. But actually, I don't know. It could go either way. But I think during its, I still think a majority of players who played it were Chinese. So you can't really try to use those numbers to extrapolate and say how popular it was globally when there was such a huge, when it clearly is biased, right? When the data is clearly biased and clearly not a accurate representation for global popularity, like other games are. Because the other games that have a peak of 50% higher than the lows, those are more natural, and you'll see that in a lot more games too. So like lots of games are like that. So you can assume a more, popular. You can assume that's kind of just what a popular game looks like globally. So while this game was still popular, even now, I still think it's getting between like 50 and 100,000 players a day concurrently on Steam. So like that's still really good, especially considering how old it is. So it's still really popular. And like there's, and then obviously all the gacha games too, like Mihalyo is Chinese. Kuro is Kuro Games Chinese? Because Kuro is Japanese. I think Kuro Kuro Game is Chinese because I think the Wuthering Waves beta was like Chinese only. I don't know, but Kuro is it's like Japanese for black. Unless it's all, I don't know. Either way, there's been a lot of game companies from China producing games that are really popular. So, and there's been a lot of American and Western influence going into China. So I think this is kind of like maybe kind of like a dig at the Chinese government, where they're just like saying, "Hey, China, stop trying to censor us. Like, you can't stop information, right? You can censor all you like, but what you're trying to censor will still get through, and so you should stop doing something stupid like blocking it, and guiding rather than blocking. Obviously, for Western society, the idea that the government can influence what people can see rubs Western civilization a little raw. But I mean, to be fair, Europe is also doing has kind of been implementing a lot of censoring, and Britain's being super fucking weird by arresting people for posting on social media, which is like fucking stupid. I think this is some sort of overcorrection. I don't think it'll last that long. I think at some point they'll realize how dystopian they've become by doing that, and like stop. Hopefully, they're going basically V for Vendetta at this point. So hopefully they'll realize the error of their ways. Like hopefully like China too, because like I think the amount of oversight the Chinese government has over its people is, I think, a little too overreaching. But it's also hard. I mean, it's difficult to say, right? Like China's fucking huge, Like India has the same kind of population of 1 million, or not 1 million, 1 billion or so. I think China has more, but like India, while a big country, can't compare to China. Like I think you can fit like 2 Indias in the space of China. Now, I mean, a lot of China is like the Himalayan mountains, and you don't have many people living there. But like China's a fucking huge place. So I don't know. Maybe managing a government of that size, like maybe this is one of the only ways you can do it. Either way, I don't think they're doing it right. And so this could be a dig at the Chinese government saying, "Hey, stop it. You can't stop the free flow of information. Stop trying to censor everything." I don't see why anything that they said was eradicating the internet, though. It seems like they wanted to heavily censor it, which wouldn't really eradicate it. Because again, like even she was saying, that's basically impossible.
君はただ人の権力で威張ってみたい。店長殿に協力してもらえるのだが、バッジを授けるわけにはいかぬ。では、我はまだ個別法。
But yeah, that was obviously a huge divergence. A little bit of a rant. Like, I don't want to make it seem like Black Myth Wukong wasn't a good game. Like, it was a really good game, but I do think that the people who like the game are a little delusional in how they think, how universally popular it is. It's like, no, the data shows that it's mostly popular in China, which is understandable because, like, I wanted to play it before it came out because I haven't read Journey to the West. I know the broad strokes of what happens, so I know the characters in play. You know, I know the priest, I know Sun Wukong, I know Bai Ji, and there's another companion as well. I don't know. It's kind of like Momotaro was like it was the pheasant monkeying bird. And I think it was loosely based off of Journey to the West. So I think it was a similar thing there. So there was obviously monkeys, Wukong, and Baiji was a little pig instead. But either way, so I think there's another companion, and I do know that they fought demons and shit like that. So I was actually kind of expecting Black Myth Wukong to kind of be that story, right? Like, you're following that monk around, and you were like beating the beast as you were like going on that journey to the west, and like I thought that was going to be it. Like I thought that was going to be what the story was. It was like, yeah, you're fighting along the path of that story, but it wasn't actually that at all. In fact, it was more of a kind of a sequel to that story, where it's like, yeah, you've already done that shit. You're already a deity, and you're fucking over the other gods, and they bitch slap you back. And you're not even Sun Wukong. You're just kind of his descendant, right? You're not like a direct descendant, but you are also, of the Monkey Clan, and you're essentially inheriting his legacy. So you are completely different. And so a lot of the stuff in there are basically like references to that initial story, that Journey to the West story. References to it and to its characters and monsters that existed in that story, are still around for when you're going through as Black Myth Wukong. Which I didn't like. Because basically, and I watched someone play through it in its entirety, and I'm just like, I have no clue what the fuck's going on. Like, some things are fine. Like, Bai Ji was a funny character anyway. Like, no matter what, having him, like, he was a funny character and an interesting character, so the dialogue between him and your main character was still entertaining. But, like, you don't have any of the frame of reference for, like, what he did in his past. Like, when he meets the spider lady, like, they talk about, like, their history, and I'm like, is this a history that happened after Journey to the West? Did they meet a spider demon in Journey to the West, and she is that demon? What am I missing, right? And so because it's treated as a sequel, I just don't have that frame of reference for the original. And that's why I think it's definitely more popular in China than the rest of the world, is because in China, everyone knows Journey to the West, right? I would not be surprised if it's taught in schools. Obviously, I don't know, because I never went to a Chinese school, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was taught in Chinese schools. And the amount of, adaptations for the story that probably exist in Chinese media has got to be insane. I would easily imagine there's over 100 adaptations through books, movies, comics, radio shows, whatever, right? I imagine that story has been told in 100 different ways 1,000 different ways over time. So as a child, as a Chinese child, you probably have experienced that story a multitude of times, so you know that story and all its characters like the back of your hand, right? And so when you come into Black Myth Wukong, they show these characters with no context of who they are or what they are. You know, because you're like, oh, it's that character from that story, or, you know, this is the side story that, you know, maybe it wasn't in Journey to the West, but was mentioned later, like someone did a adaptation and like did this and that, and so it's like, so they understand the context for all this shit, but as a Westerner, you just don't have that, for the most part. Obviously, some people have read Journey to the West. I'm not even sure if Journey to the West would include literally everything in there, or if there are other supplementary media you'd have to experience to have a full understanding of all the backstories and context of every character in the game. So, you know, and so basically that really turned me off, because I'm just like, you know what? Even if I play the game, like, I'm still not going to understand it. Like, I can enjoy scenes for what they are, but I'll always still feel kind of in the back of my head, what the fuck's going on? Who the fuck are these people? Like, why should I care? You know? Because, like, there's the characters you meet. Because, like, some of the anime stuff like that, some of the anime cutscenes and shit, after, like, beating a boss or scene transitions and shit like that, would, like, be talking about these characters. And I'm like, should I care about these characters? Like, do they matter? Like, I don't think we've met them in the game. Like, who are these people, right? And sure, you could, like, enjoy the story for what it is, but, like, when it's just, when you have no clue who they are and if you should care, or why you should care, right? It's hard to get emotionally invested in this shit. And I think that's where it kind of falls off for Western gamers, is that they just don't have that frame of reference that maybe Chinese players have. So that's why it's just far more popular in China, because it just resonates with them more. Now, it's still a good game, so that's why Western players can still enjoy it, right? Western players can still enjoy it for the gameplay. And, you know, FromSoft has done a good job at training players to stop caring about the story. You know? Because FromSoft games are so bereft of story that, you know, the people who enjoy those games are pleasantly surprised if they're, well, not even pleasantly surprised. Sometimes they'll even bitch and moan if there's a single cutscene. You know, they're just like, oh, I want gameplay. It's like, yeah, this is 95% gameplay, but because there's 5% cutscenes, you're like whining and bitching about it. It's like, Jesus Christ. This whole complaint about cutscenes in video games is fucking insane. Like, I understand yeah, sure, like Final Fantasy 16, a lot of cutscenes, right? But it also had a really amazing story. And it was a fun game to play. But you get these people who are like, no, if a game has anything over 10% cutscenes, it's shit. I don't want to watch a movie. I want to play a game. It's just like, Jesus fucking Christ. It's like, and have you ever thought that there are people unlike you who actually like story? Who actually like stories in their games? Who like a little more investment? You know, like the story in Elden Ring is dog shit. You have no clue who the fuck you are. You have no clue why the fuck you're trying to become Elden Lord. You have no clue what the fuck the Elden Lord even is. You know? America should be the one with all the power because she's the representative of the outer will. So then what the fuck is the Elden Lord? Like, we don't even know what powers Godfrey had. Like, he had a lion on his back. That was like maybe like some extra power and shit like that. But like, what? Like, is that it? Like, you got a shadow lion and that's it. That was what you got as Elden Lord. Like there's just none of it makes any sense. And that's the problem, is that FromSoft's trained players to be like, oh, no story, no problem, because they're just like, yeah, fuck it. And so it's like, you get a bunch of people who like those type of games coming into story-based games and be like bitching and moaning about it. It's like, dude, just like I don't go into Elden Ring and bitch and moan about how much it sucks. You know, I mean, like, you could say, well, you're complaining now. It's like, yeah. I'm just giving my reasons why I'm not going to play Elden Ring. I'm not going to pretend. Like, basically, when people are saying how great Elden Ring is, I'm not going to go and say, no, Elden Ring is shit, right? No. I didn't play Elden Ring. I know why I didn't play it. I know why I'll never play it. You know? I know these things. I'm not going to try to, like, I'm not going to join the conversation to try to make Elden Ring into a game I want to play. I'll just look for a game that is more of what I want to play. You know? I'm not going to play that game because I'm not super interested in it. And I'm not going to expect it to become a game that I would be interested in. But you get a lot of entitled, bitchy gamers who are just like, no, I like these games. All games should be made according to my taste. Not just Elden Ring players, like just in general, gamers in general, right? It's like you just can't seem to make a game for a minority anymore. Like, in the sense of like not a literal, like a not a racial minority, but like a minority of the game, of the gamer player base, right? Like, obviously with all this DEI bullshit going around, like there were a lot of people saying yes, DEI, inserting DEI into games fuck them up, and yeah, there definitely are a lot of examples for that. But like people were bringing up like Duskborn, right? And they were showing like, I mean, it kind of did suck that it got too much press essentially, because like it was always going to be this game, right? Even before DEI, the game developers were like, no, we want to make this game, so they make this game. But like unfortunately, I think it was like on the Sony State of Play or Xbox Showcase or something. Basically, because it got a lot of eyes on it, people then were like, "Oh my God, it's the same DEI bullshit. This is dog shit." And it was, it was used in reference to show like, look how few players there are playing it. This game sucks. And it's like, now, and the developers of the game even came up and said, like, we were never intending for this to be like a ridiculously popular game, right? Like, we didn't make this game thinking that it would appeal to hundreds of millions of players. We made this game trying to appeal to a specific audience, and all the games we make are never super commercially successful right out the gate. They're a game that has their audience, and they'll slowly make their sales, and and make their money back, right? And that's like how the developer has always done it. And they said that they're on track with making their money back. Now, obviously, this is the developer speaking, so they could be lying. They could just be bullshitting and be like, yeah, we're totally fine. But it does kind of suck, because it's like a bunch of people who would have never liked that game to begin with, now shitting on the game, saying it's crap and trash and DEI bullshit. And it's just like, dude, you were never the target audience for this. But you're complaining about it like this game should be catered for you. It's like, no. Games have their target audience. I mean, so the problem with like DEI insertions, like the DEI insertions into like Veilguard, Dragon Age Veilguard, is like Dragon Age had an established base, right? If you appealed to, like, Dragon Age had a target audience, right? And basically by inserting this DEI, these DEI content into the game, you're trying to like appeal to a broader market, but you're also making it less appealing to your target audience. And that's where the problem actually comes into, is when you're inserting this stuff, which is which is not in line with your actual target audience. That's where the problems come into existence. Dustborn was always intended to be for that target audience. So for people shitting on it for having this content, it's like, well, no, this content, they're trying to appeal to the audience who likes that type of content. And I think that is kind of becoming a problem in gaming discourse these days, is that you get a lot of people who were never intended to be the target audience of a game, speaking as if the game is bad because it doesn't appeal to them, which I think is stupid. And, I mean, Asmongold makes a point, like, for the review bombs on, like, Metacritic and stuff like that, saying, oh, those reviews are valid. I'm like, no, they're 100% not valid, right? Like, Metacritic has a bunch of user reviews where you can post anything, right? You can post a 0, and you see that. Like, Dragon Age Veilguard got a bunch of 0s. Why? Because like, Tosh and all the bullshit surrounding her. But, like, Tosh is, like, less than 10% of the game. So you're giving it a 0 because less than 10% of the game is shit, right? Like, that's obviously, like, bullshit. Like, it clearly isn't a 0. And you get people, like, talking in his chat when he talks about the game, saying, oh my god, it's a 2, it's a 4. It's like, dude, it's objectively above average. Like, many aspects of the game are amazing. Visuals are amazing, environment is amazing. I like combat, but obviously, depending on your feel on action combat, could be hit or miss. So it's like, obviously above average game, but people are like, oh my god, because Tosh exists, it's now a 4. It's like, dude, fuck off, no. Like, I think it's like a 7. I think if Tosh didn't exist, it'd probably be an 8. I think Tosh really dragged the game down. I think all aspects of her story and her character really just made the game less fun and interesting. Because like the character quests for all the other characters and the overall story was pretty interesting. I enjoyed it. But Tosh really dragged everything down. And so that she loses a point for the game. But you get like people, and so you get like the game getting review bombed, and like Asmund was like, oh yeah, this is showing player sentiment. So well, no, because you don't need player sentiment, right? Because like Dragon Age Veilguard was never going to appeal to all gamers, right? Like Dragon Age Veilguard was not going to appeal to first-person shooter. People who love first-person shooters who play Call of Duty and that's all they play. First-person shooters, that's it. Dragon Age Veilguard was never going to appeal to them, right? But maybe these first-person shooters are part of the Reddit community. They saw people shitting on the game, so they dash over to the Metacritic and review bomb it for its perceived slights, you know? Give it a 0 out of 10. So Asmund like tries to make it seem like, oh, well, these reviews are from your potential customers, and this just shows how you're not appealing to your potential customers. But it's like, I think there's a logical fallacy in that not every single person leaving a review was a potential customer, right? Even if they didn't have a DEI content, I still think a majority of the players would still not be playing it anyway, right? Even if all the DEI stuff was completely extracted, I still think that a lot of the players who left it a 0 out of 10 probably still wouldn't have played it, right? And that's why I think it's bullshit, because you get people who would never have played the game reviewing it as a product which they'd never played, right? And that's why I prefer Steam in a sense, because Steam at least makes you have to buy the game. And I understand the concept of that is that it is a biased sample size, right? You're only getting the people who have bought the game, and I do agree on some points of Asmund, where he says that, you know, it could be that the media that you use to promote your game turned off some people, and you did drive away some customers, and those customers can now express their dislike of your promotional material in those reviews. But I just disagree. I do not think they should be counted on the same level compared to people who actually played the game, right? Because you're like, sure, should it matter? A little bit, yeah. You know, if you're presenting your game as something it's not, or you're presenting it in a really shit way, you could definitely drive away your user base. So knowing general user sentiment of people from before they bought the game, sure, that could help companies. But to include it with the same people who actually played the game is bullshit. These are people who actually played the game and can actually leave a review. Oh, I played this game. I like this. I didn't like this. Whereas the people who didn't play the game at all are just leaving a 0 out of 10, DEI woke bullshit, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, it's not constructive because it can't be constructive. You know? It can't be constructive because they didn't play the game. They don't know anything about the game other than what they saw from some other person, which is not obviously a great indicator of it. So, like, if you want to make a separate section for, like, vibes on Metacritic, where it's like, here's the user reviews of people who played the game, and here's a vibe check thing where people who haven't purchased the game or haven't played the game can leave their impressions of it from that. That'd be fine. I just don't think it should taint the actual reviews from people who actually played the game. Because, like, those are the reviews of people who actually know what the fuck they're talking about to a degree. Obviously, everyone's interpretation of everything is different. Like, I might like this type of game, not this type of game, so I'm going to weigh these subjects more than this subject. You know, I like story in games, so if a game doesn't have a really good story, even if the gameplay is amazing, I'll still not rate it as highly as someone who really likes good gameplay and doesn't give a shit about story, right? As an easy example, you know? So it might be an 8 for me, but a 9 for them type thing, or whatever, right? Obviously, there's going to be differences, which is fine. You know, we all care about different things, and we'll weight different subsections of a game's creation differently. But at least, you know, we played the game, and so we can give it a relatively unbiased opinion. But, like, if you haven't played it at all, then clearly you're giving a biased opinion, because you were basing your opinion off of nothing. You're basing your opinion off of no first-hand data. It's all hearsay. And as Amber Heard's trial taught us, hearsay is irrelevant. Objection, hearsay. Yes, hearsay is meaningless in a court of law It should be meaningless in quarter reviews. It doesn't matter what people are saying about the game. It matters what the game actually is and how much or little you enjoyed it. Right? Because like people are just so fucking stupid. They're like, oh, it's 0 out of 10 games. Like, dude, even Gollum, the Gollum game, which is objectively trash, is still only like a 2 or something like that, 2 or 3. So like, even though it's a terrible, terrible, terrible game, it's still not a 0. And so people giving it a 0 are just there to intentionally fuck over the reviews. And to be fair, there are also people who give it a 10 out of 10, even though it clearly isn't as well. But again, that one gets a little bit harder to determine, right? Because like, you know, that 10 out of 10 could be an honest 10 out of 10. They honestly really liked it and they think it's one of the best games they've ever played. You know, who are you to say, right? Or maybe the aspects of the game resonated with them slightly more. So a game that maybe is objectively at 8 out of 10, it bumps up 2 points because of their subjective approval of certain subjects or gameplay mechanics or whatever. You know? But like to go from, so like to say, you know, someone's impression could be like plus or minus 3 of what it objectively is. You know, if it's a 7 out of 10 game, sure, you could see some people with 10s, you could see some people with 4s, depending on how they evaluate certain subjects. But to give it a 0 is clearly bullshit. Right? You're clearly just trying to review bomb the game. You clearly don't like the game and want to do poorly, regardless of reality. Just I don't like that. I think they should not be considered part of the game. But shit, I've already been ranting for too long. So I'm actually gonna have to put a pin in this and play some more tomorrow, even though I've like barely started. But I ranted too long. Sorry, everybody. Too big a rant from me. It's already been walking for like an hour and 5 minutes. So I gotta stop, get something to eat. But yeah, that's just my general opinion about games and censorship and all that shit. Like, I don't know. I liked Veilguard. I thought it was a fun game. I can see why people didn't like it, because obviously Dragon Age has kind of been diverging bit by bit from its original. People really like Dragon Age Origins, and are mad that Dragon Age Veilguard is not like that. But I think that's an unfair comparison, because Dragon Age 2 was worse than Dragon Age Origins. Dragon Age Inquisition, like basically every single game since Dragon Age Origins has diverged from that initial formula. So you're complaining that Dragon Age Veilguard is not like Dragon Age Origins, but there were 2 games in between that were also not like Dragon Age Origins, so like why are you shitting on this game for doing the exact same thing the other 2 are? And I get it, right? You like Dragon Age Origins, you would like them to go back to that. Fine. That's fine, right? But I think the discourse around, oh my god, it's bad because it's not like that, is a little bullshit. Because the other games are not like that. Like, it's a matter of expectations, right? If you were expecting Dragon Age Veilguard to be like Origins, then you're an idiot. Because the other 2 games clearly proved that they're not heading in that direction, right? Now, so I think reviewing it poorly because it didn't live up to your expectations of being like Dragon Age Origins is stupid. I think if you don't like it because it's not like Dragon Age Origins is fine, right? You have your preferences, you like what you like. If you like Dragon Age Origins and you don't like this because it's not like Dragon Age Origins, that is fine. But if you're going to bitch and moan, I think it's stupid to bitch and moan that it's not like Dragon Age Origins, because that is your incorrect expectations. Like, basically, I mean, I don't mean to like be it sounds super censory when I say this, but like, I don't think you should be complaining about it, right? That it's not like Dragon Age Origins. I think the bitching is the problem, right? It's not that you can't, not that you can't express your dislike, but to say, I don't like Dragon Age. I don't like Dragon Age Veilguard. I prefer Dragon Age Origins. That's fine, right? But to then say this is a shit game because it's not like Dragon Age Origins, I think that's where the problem is, right? Because that reeks of expectations. You're like, no, I like this game. All games should be like this. Because this game is not made like that, it's bad, right? It's like, no, like, basically, it goes from turning your dislikes into what should or shouldn't be, and I think that's the problem. You get a lot of entitled people who are like, I like this. Everyone, like, all games should be made like this. Or like, I like Dragon Age Origins. All Dragon Age games should be made like Dragon Age Origins. It's like, I think that's stupid, right? Like, you shouldn't be like restricting game developers like that. But similarly, you know, like, because like, you know, like game developers should be free to make whatever they want, right? They made a really good game. They want to make a sequel. The problem comes when like business gets into it, right? When they're just like, I think, and that's why, like, you know, what Sven from Larian Studios is saying, you know, about, you know, what the game of the year would be, you know, a passionate team of developers, and like that's true. Like, I think a passionate team of developers that makes an amazing game. They're like, yes, we have this amazing idea for our game. Let's do this cool, awesome thing. And then the problem is that after you make that successful game, then like the suits kind of sneak in sometimes, where it's like, hey, that game was really popular. Let's make a sequel, right? And it's like, well, yeah, but like we came in with this amazing idea for this original game. Like, we didn't come in with a way to expand the idea. So now sometimes they're that good, and they can be like, cool, let's expand it in a really awesome way. And other times it feels a little too phoned in, where you're just like, like it feels more of a cash grab, right? Where they didn't have a clear vision of what they wanted to do, so it just lacks the quality and passion of the first game, right? Like Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy X too. 10 was amazing. 10-2 was like, what are you doing? Like, it's not like super bad, but it's not really good either. Like, 10 was an amazing game. Like, 10-2 was like an okay game, where it's like, why? Like, why does it even exist? Like, it doesn't really expand on the original game at all. It's like, oh, there's this like Titus wannabe, maybe. Like, I haven't even like beaten the game, so I'm not even sure who that fake Titus is, or if it's a real thing at all. So, or if there even is a happy ending. It just feels so like weird, and it's like, I don't know. It could have been interesting too. Like, what is Spira like after Sin has been defeated? How is the world like living? And it just kind of doesn't really explore that in a really good way, to me, right? So it feels more cash grabby. It feels like, oh, the suits came in and said, hey, this is super popular, let's make a sequel, and then you like the game developers like kind of forced into making a game without a clear vision and stuff like that. I think that's kind of where problems pop up, and then where kind of shit comes in. So like, I'm not sure if that happened for Dragon Age. Like, the Dragon Age story seems fine. Like, there were contiguous bits, and like the references in Veilguard to the previous games were interesting. So, like, it's not like it didn't have that, but yeah, I don't know. It's kind of, it's tough, right? Like, there definitely are those sequels that are just like, why are you making this? Like Call of Duties, like where you just keep making more Call of Duties, and you're just like, why are you doing this? Like, you're just making the same game over and over again. Like, and the sports games where it's like, do you really need to make another game? Like, it hasn't changed. You just like change the roster or the stats or something like that. It's like, you don't need to do that, you know. So there definitely is that kind of shit. It becomes difficult. And then of course there's always the Ship of Theseus argument, where it's like, sure, the team that made it back then, you know, after the success of that game, some of them, you know, maybe some of them retired. Maybe some of them decided, hey, you know what, you know. Like, maybe some of the team from the original Dragon Age Origins, right? When they saw what, you know, when they made, then they went on to make Dragon Age 2, and they're like, you know what? I don't really like the direction of Dragon Age 2. I'm going to split off and, you know, form my own group, form my own company, or join another company that focuses more on CRPGs, because that's like what I like, right? It could be something like that. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and call it here. But thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.